Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Amazing Audiobooks for Summer and Beyond. I'm Heather Booth, Booklist's audio editor. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. You, the audience, are in listen-only mode, but we do welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click the Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides were sent directly to you from Zoom at the start of the webinar, but you can also download them at any time by copying the URLs on the screen here into your web browser. On Monday, all attendees will receive a follow-up email containing links to today's slide presentation, certificate of completion, and the video recording. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Michelle Cobb, Audio Sales Director at LA Theater Works, Leah Kleinhans, Marketing Manager at ECW Press, Jen Rubens, Associate Director, Library Marketing at Books on Tape, and William Anderson, Audiobook Sales and Marketing Manager at Naxos AudioBooks. First, we'll hear from Michelle Cobb. Michelle has served on the Audio Publisher Association APA board since 2001 as a director and officer, and is currently the executive director. She is a partner at Forte Business Consulting, which provides PR, sales, marketing, and business development services for the publishing industry. And she is Audio Publishing Director for LA Theater Works. Welcome, Michelle. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Heather. It's so great to be here. I thought I would kick us off not by talking about LA Theater Works, but actually by talking about the state of audiobooks right now. So if we look at the next slide, we see and are reminded that production for audiobooks has been on the rise for really years and years. And we've seen double-digit growth in both dollars and unit sales for 7 years in a row. Now we're looking forward to later in June for the Audio Publishers Association to release its annual consumer and sales data. That'll be 2020 consumer data and 2019 sales data. And one of the questions that I've been getting a lot is, how are audiobooks doing in COVID-19? Well, the good news is that we've certainly seen from both library and retail members reports of people talking about great use of audiobooks when everyone's locked down at home. So Overdrive has been reporting a rapid increase in digital audiobook adoption. And then one of the APA retail members, Chirp, said that for the first few weeks, they saw a downward turn in listening because people were not listening during normal commuting hours. However, as we all got settled in and we started to rejigger our schedule, that listening went up, and it's gone up to above the early March numbers. So that's exciting. So let's take a look at the next slide. We see that more time in general for years has been reported in the APA survey as something that's going on. We see an increase in younger listeners. We see podcast listening has helped support that growth. And of course, there's been a huge rise in digital for many devices, but really the smartphone has led the pack. And this is all information from the consumer sales data that Edison Research puts together for the APA. All right, you know it's June, so June is Audiobook Month. Let's take a look at what the APA members are doing to celebrate. Well, there's lots of fun stuff, including an audiobook challenge on Instagram. You could actually win this very cute yellow or blue or red cell phone holder that's also a squishy doll, so if you are stressed out about something when you're at work, at home, wherever, you can squish it. If you participate in the 30 days of the Instagram challenge, you could also be eligible to win the grand prize of a very cool pair of headsets. So we hope that you look for the APA Audiobooks challenge and actually participate. All right, now I'm going to turn my attention to LA Theater Works. LA Theater Works is a group that records plays. usually in front of a live audience. And so you can often hear the background reaction, the laughter, the tears, all of those things. And they are nonprofit. So a lot of what you'll hear me talk about is ways in which we ensure that theater can reach the far places across the globe. So if you are in Kansas or if you are in Africa, wherever you are, you could actually hear a play. You might not be able to get to Broadway or to see our recordings in LA, but you can experience the same thing. Now, one of the things that we do every summer is participate in the Sync Audiobooks for Teens program. That's a program run by AudioFile magazine where audiobooks are given away 2 titles each week for free. We've partnered with Overdrive to give them away in the Sora app this year, but the first thing that you and your patrons need to do is go to audiobooksync.com and register. Then you can download the Sora app and access the titles. Unfortunately, we've passed the download period for Sisters Matsumoto, but this is a fantastic title and can be available in your library collection. It's about 3 Japanese American sisters returning to their farm after years in a World War II internment camp. And it's got some really fantastic acting. In fact, I've truly enjoyed the performance of Keiko Agena, who plays the youngest sister. This is available on CD and digital and was supported in part by the California Civil Liberties Program from the California State Library. All right, let's take a look at an upcoming title for Sync. This starts on July 16th, so you and your patrons can still access the title for free. Now remember, the program is designed to focus on teens, but there's a wide range of titles that will appeal to people of all ages. But encourage the teens and the parents of teens that you know to take a look at the program. LA TheaterWorks' title Fake by Eric Simonson, who's an Oscar and Tony-nominated writer and director, explores the most famous archaeological hoax in American history. This is about the Piltman man skull. And there were lots of people that were actually suspected, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the legendary Sherlock Holmes books. This title is sponsored in part by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, which brings together the arts with the sciences. And it includes an interview with Russell H. Tuttle, who's a professor of anthropology and evolutionary biology at the University of Chicago. Many of the LA TheaterWorks titles do include those special extras to give you a little bit more context, especially into the science plays. All right, we're still going to talk about free. The next up, we've got the Setting the Stage for Learning program. This is designed for teachers to encourage listening with their students. Now, when the world sort of turned topsy-turvy a few months ago, we decided to expand our program. So there are now 25 titles available for streaming, including Hamlet and Jane Eyre. All you have to do is go to latw.org/education. If you're a homeschool parent, if you're a teacher, you can enroll there. We'll send you a special link where you and your students can go and stream the plays, and we've extended the free streaming time until the end of 2020. So please encourage people in your life that would qualify for that program to let them know. Okay, let's focus on some titles here. One of my favorite playwrights is Tom Stoppard, and The Hard Problem is a play about a young woman named Hillary. She gets a job at a prestigious think tank, and she develops this special experiment to prove that humans are intrinsically altruistic. Unfortunately, it does not go so well. All right, next up we'll look at an Audiophile Earphones Award winner, The Magic Barrel. This is from the author of The Natural. It's a classic short story that was adapted into a dramatic performance and included cast such as David Cromer, who won the Tony Award. So this is about a young rabbinical student and his faithful encounter with an enigmatic matchmaker. Next up, we've got another play that we did in conjunction with Sloan. It's a very important piece about a medical breakthrough. It was set in the 1840s in Alabama, and a slave-owning doctor was trying to solve the problems of fistulas, which is a post childbirth anomaly. Unfortunately, he was using enslaved women to actually conduct experiments on. It's definitely an amazing listen. Stars people like Dominic Morseau, Larry Powell, Josh Stamberg, and Karen Molina White. As part of the Relativity program, teachers and students can have free listening access, and that's available in our site and on a free podcast this week. So feel free to access it in those ways. It is also available for sale both through digital and CD means. We'll shift a little to talk about pressure. In this play, a Scottish meteorologist is locking horns with his American counterpart as they're both trying to convince Dwight D. Eisenhower that they can predict the weather and say whether or not he should complete the D-Day invasion. The play stars Sarah Drew, who you may recognize from such television shows as Everwood and Grey's Anatomy. We turn to another short story adaptation. Fate is about a talkative New Yorker who really corners someone at a cocktail party and forces him to listen to the story of her life. Again, it stars Tony winner David Cromer. In our next play, we are dealing with a child who stows away on the battleship Yamato when she is trying to get home to her mother on Okinawa. And things aren't necessarily going particularly well on that battleship. This has a truly fantastic and very recognizable cast of June Angela and B.D. Wong, among others. Let's take a look at a classic, Heinrich Ibsen's Hedda Gabler, which was translated into English by Doug Hughes. Hedda Gabler is a very classic and troubled character in the theater world. She is truly desperate in her life and makes a lot of dangerous choices. A fascinating listen. Now, if you're looking for something fun, we're going to go right to Die, Mommy, Die. So Charles Busch, who actually wrote the piece and originated it off Broadway, he stars in it as Angela Arden, who wants to be free of her suffocating marriage. And so she takes matters into her own hands via poison. And then her daughter tries to find out the truth through various means. Truly a laugh out loud listen. Now, we've had some changes to our production schedule because obviously we can't record live right now, but coming soon is Viet Gone, about two Vietnamese refugees who have kind of a hilarious traipsing across America after they've met in a relocation camp. And this is based on kind of the story of the author's parents, so some basis in reality. And also coming soon is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This was adapted for us by Kate McCall, who has done a lot of work with LA TheatreWorks and the BBC, and stars the fantastic Stacy Keach, who's sitting right there in the front of the production photograph. Now, over the years, we've recorded many, many titles, really over 500, hard to believe. But we put 250 of the essential plays together in a special CD collection. We circulate it in 25 different volumes so that people can take out 10 or 12 plays at a time. And it includes a lot of Pulitzer Prize winners, Tony winners, etc. Now, normally each play volume would cost a certain amount and each single play would cost a certain amount, but we put together the whole thing in a very affordable package of $999, which includes free shipping and free replacements. And this was the collection through 2012. If we go to the next slide, we see that each year we release a new volume of the collection. Each volume in the original collection and each new volume costs $50 on its own, or $49.95, really. Some fantastic plays in here. And some of the titles I've been talking about today are in the 2019 collection, which you see on the next slide. That has 9 plays, including Die, Mommy, Die and Hedda Gabler. All right, we are coming to the end of our time here, but the good news is that here is my information, and I want to remind everybody that we do have our titles available digitally through Overdrive, through Hoopla, and all the digital vendors. I certainly am always looking for fantastic suggestions about what plays you would want to see recorded and be able to be made available to your patrons and students. So please, I encourage you, use my email address right there. I'll be here the rest of the time and taking questions in the Q&A box, of course. And there's our website if you have any other questions about LA Theater Works. As a nonprofit, it really helps when you buy direct from us, so don't hesitate to do that on CD, but all the digital downloads, as I mentioned, are through your favorite vendors. Thanks for listening, and away I go.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Next, we'll hear from Leah Kleinhans. Leah is the audiobook manager at ECW Press. She oversees the production of 100 plus audiobooks a year and has the privilege of working with several of Canada's top publishing houses to produce audio versions of the newest and most highly anticipated books each season. Take it away, Leah.
Hello, and thank you for that introduction. As she mentioned, my name is Leah Kleinhans, and I am the audiobook manager here at ECW Press. I have the pleasure of participating in almost every part of the audiobook production process, really. But one of my favorite parts of my job is getting to share the finished product with all of you. So before I get into talking about our audiobooks, I wanted to tell you a little bit about ECW Press, in case you're not already familiar with us. I'm really so proud of our company. Started out as a regular small Canadian publisher of paper books and ebooks, and has become a major part of the audiobook production industry over the past few years. Next slide, please. As you can see, we wear a lot of hats. We still are a publisher of paper and audio and ebooks, but we also produce audiobooks for many of Canada's other leading publishers. And we're also happy to provide distribution services for those publishers that do their own production. And what this means is that many of Canada's most recognizable titles are available in audio form and on all platforms where audiobooks are purchased. Next slide. So where can you buy an ECW audiobook? The answer is really anywhere. If you don't see your library's platform of choice on this page, that's really just because of my lack of graphic design skills and not because our books aren't distributed there. Our titles are available for purchase on all library and retail platforms. But I'm going to say that's enough housekeeping for now, so let's dive into the good stuff. Next slide. Thank you. Our first title is Ladies of the Night by Althea Prince. This collection of short stories focuses on the lives and the loves of women living in Antigua and Toronto. All of these stories will challenge the reader in different ways and are sure to haunt them after the book is finished. As you can see, the audiobook has been favorably reviewed by Audiophile magazine, who especially praised Gemini's authentic own voice narration. I didn't include it in this excerpt, actually, but the full review also praises Gemini's singing, which she found especially funny when she read the review because she hates singing and only agreed to sing the songs in the book as a favor to the author. And the author is Althea Prince, who is a much beloved and highly respected Canadian writer. And we were so pleased to play a part in bringing her work to life in audio form. Next slide, please. The next book I have for you today is Tilly and the Crazy Eights, which is written by Monique Gray Smith and narrated by Michelle Thrush. I have to admit, this book has a special place in my heart. As anyone who loves books can attest, when a story really does a good job of presenting an important message on a sensitive topic in a way that can educate while entertaining young readers, it reminds you of the power books have. Monique's book does an incredible job of teaching young readers about the terrible way Indigenous people have been treated in North America without taking away from the equally important stories of joy and triumph that these characters experience. And I think our lovely hosts for this presentation, Booklist, put it best when they said, listeners eager for an Indigenous perspective will want to check out this emotionally affecting pairing of prose and narrator. And I definitely personally recommend this book to readers of all ages, not just young adults, who are looking for a book about growth and reconciliation, especially during these difficult times. Next slide, please. So for our next book, I have The Subtweet by Vivek Shreya. And some of you may recognize Vivek's name as the author of her best-selling memoir, I'm Afraid of Men. As a 5-time Lambda Literary Award finalist, LGBT plus activist, and a prolific multimedia artist, there really isn't much Vivek hasn't done. This book was a very special project for her because it's a fictional story that focuses on the powerful love found in friendship instead of romantic love. And it's also a story that celebrates the voices of women, in particular brown women. Part of the reason Vivek didn't want to narrate this book herself as she has her other books is so that another brown woman could have her voice heard, literally. And she worked very closely throughout the casting process and the pre-production process with Nisha Ahuja to bring this book to life in audio form. And I think the friendship and respect those two women had for each other is really a reflection of what makes this audiobook so special. Next slide, please. So these next two books are memoirs of Alison Waring, who first captured the world with her memoir, Confessions of a Fairy's Daughter, published in 2013, about her experience as a child growing up in the 80s with a gay father. And Alison's second memoir, Moments of Glad Grace, recently published in April 2020, continues her story from where it left off in Confessions. The heartfelt story walks readers through her father's Parkinson's diagnosis and their subsequent fairly spontaneous decision to travel to Ireland for genealogical research together, which probably would have gone fine if Alison didn't have any interest at all in genealogical research. Her narration will really make people laugh, it'll make people cry, and it will certainly leave readers fully satisfied as they join Alison and her father on this beautiful journey. Next slide, please. My next two books are the final books in the Alchemist Council trilogy. This high fantasy series has been drawing in fans since the first book was published in 2016. These last two books are narrated by Sharon Taylor, an actress well known for her roles on Stargate Atlantis, Bad Blood, and most recently, Altered Carbon. Audiophile magazine writes that listeners will love this thought-provoking listen, and they are absolutely right, in my totally very unbiased opinion. As a lover of high fantasy myself, I highly recommend this series as a completely unit that your readers can enjoy from the first book to the last book in the series. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next book on my list is The Tiger Flu, written by Larissa Lai and narrated by Grace Lynn Kung, known for her roles in Miss Salone and Star Trek Discovery, as well as Lisa Truong, known for her role in the DC Comics film Shazam. Larissa Lai is also the recent recipient of the Lambda Literary Foundation's Mid-Career Novelist Prize, so all around a very talented group of ladies. The Tiger Flu is a cyberpunk thriller about a community of parthenogenic women sent into exile by the very patriarchal system that now needs their parthenogenic abilities to survive the diseases ravaging Saltwater City. The book was first published in 2018 and is newly available in audio this year. In 2018, this book was really a cautionary tale, but now in 2020, it's a little closer to reality than we might be comfortable with. And I definitely recommend it for readers who don't mind reading something that's a little similar to the events currently happening in the world today. Next slide, please. So the title of this next book is How Does a Single Blade of Grass Thank the Sun? And it actually has an interesting story behind it. The title is a quote from a famous NBA basketball player, Yao Ming, who said this in response to being asked about his feelings towards the very first basketball team he ever played for in Shanghai. Indeed, how does a single blade of grass thank the sun? The title captures the theme behind this collection of short stories. Each story depicts the unique personal history of a new Asian Canadian character and explains how their experiences have shaped their perception of the world and the way they interact with others. The book is written by Doretta Lau and narrated by Yuta Takanaka and Andrea Bang. And some of you may recognize Andrea Bang from her starring role on Kim's Convenience, a beloved comedy series distributed internationally by Netflix and based on the best-selling book of the same title by Ines Choi. Next slide, please. These next two books are the first and second titles in the Pippa Green series, and this is a young adult series that has all the humor, wit, and heart that any young reader would look for in a series all about the highs and lows of teenagehood. The author Chantal Guertin is well known for her adult fiction books as well, like Stuck in Downward Dog and Love Struck. Her relatable voice is perfectly captured by narrator Anna Sani, who you might not know by name, but you would recognize her voice if you heard it from her many, many roles in various cartoons and animes that she has dubbed. And really the series is perfect for young adult fans of authors like Sarah Dessen and Jenny Han, and any young adults who are kind of looking for something to listen to throughout the summer. I highly recommend it. Next slide, please. This next book is called Shut Up, You're Pretty, written by Taya Matunji, and it is the first book published under Arsenal Pulp's BS Books imprint, which is curated by the aforementioned Vivek Shreya. If I didn't mention it before, she really does do it all. This disarming story collection tells the story of women who are interconnected through life and through their shared experience of society's expectations for what it means to be a woman. And you'll also recognize the narrator from the first book I presented, because I know you've all been memorizing everything I've said today. But just in case you haven't, Gemini is also the narrator of Ladies of the Night and has been highly praised for her excellent narration on both books. Shut Up, You're Pretty is an incredible work of debut fiction, and it's only growing in popularity as more people discover this incredible new author. Next slide, please. This is another book that it has a very special place in my heart. In Search of the Perfect Singing Flamingo was quite an endeavor to produce, but it was really worthwhile. With 4 narrators who each have a POV from the book, it definitely brings to life the full story. The first narrator is Miles Maley. He's narrated over 50 audiobooks in his career, and he reads the part of our main character, Henry, who's a simple man with few needs, who really just wants things to stay the same, even if that means taking a road trip across the country to buy an animatronic flamingo that he can't afford while taking care of 2 young people that are just as lost as he is. Melanie Malozzi is an own voice narrator who reads the part of Henry's daughter, Star, a young woman who longs to be independent. But this is difficult for Star because she has Williams syndrome, a disorder that leaves her both needing space to make her own decisions and living her own life, while also needing constant support from her family who have their own struggles. The other 2 narrators are Laura Kaswati and Richard Lamb, who voice the parts of Melanie and Darren in the book. And all around, this book really is it's a delight to read, and the narrators are all so talented and did an amazing job on it. So definitely one that I highly recommend for any fans of literary fiction. These next 2 titles are examples of some of ECW's great nonfiction offerings. We'll have a lot more nonfiction books coming later in the year as well. So if that's something that you and your listeners are interested in, that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. But for now, I have 2 brand new audiobooks coming out in July and August, which are both by Dr. Joe Schwartz. And Dr. Joe, for anyone who's not already familiar, has written over 10 books debunking the myths of everyday science. And readers who are familiar with his humorous and intelligent books will love hearing his writing come to life through narrator Garrett Goodison, who helps Dr. Joe put the fun back in science through his stellar narration. For our next book by Chef Joshna Maharaj, it's called Take Back the Tray. And this is a book about the state of institutionalized food. And whether that's the food served in schools, hospitals, or prisons, institutionalized food doesn't have a good reputation for being particularly healthy or appetizing. But if you take a look behind the counter, as Joshna explains all the missteps we're taking in serving some of the most vulnerable populations unhealthy, radiated food-like substances, when we could be serving them sustainable, nourishing, and affordable meals. Joshna details how we can and how she actually has implemented affordable food programs in various institutions and the positive effects those changes have made. And as someone who can personally say that I've attended a school where Joshna's program was put into effect, I can really attest to not only how good this book is, but the fact that it is practical advice. So definitely a book I recommend for those looking for practical real-world content. And that's all I've got for today. So thank you so much for listening. And I look forward to connecting with any curious listeners after today's presentation. To get in touch, you can follow us on Instagram and participate in our ongoing audiobook giveaway contest at ECW Audio. You can also sign up for one of our newsletters if you want to learn more about ECW's new and forthcoming audiobooks. Or if you prefer to just get free audiobooks, you can sign up for our Insiders program. And everyone's eligible to participate, including any of your patrons, so please feel free to spread that around. It's just a free audiobook platform where you get free books in exchange for honest reviews. And finally, if you're not into newsletters, but you would love a free audiobook, you can go ahead and request a free copy of an audiobook from my part of today's webinar by visiting ecwinsiders.com/webinar-arcs and use password booklist to request your free title today. So thank you so much for your time, and please enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Thank you, Leah. Next up, we have Jen Rubens. Jen is the Associate Director of Library Marketing at Books on Tape and has been listening to audiobooks since she learned to read, turning the page when she heard the chimes. I remember that myself. Jen has devoted herself to supporting the art of storytelling in some shape or form for as long as she can remember, and she first discovered her passion for publishing while working as both copy editor and author of reading comprehension books. Jen couldn't be more thrilled to bring her passion for books, actors, and storytelling all together with Books on Tape, where she's always excited to connect with libraries and listeners. Thank you for joining us today, Jen.
Hi, thanks for having me, and thanks to all of you for listening in. It's really an honor to be here. That's my contact info on the screen, so do feel free to reach out if you have questions following the webinar. There's wonderful collections and audiobook clips, of course, and narrator news and lots more at booksontape.com. And if you're not familiar with our Volumes app, that's from Penguin Random House Audio, and it's a wonderful way to assist you with your readers and listeners advisory. And we have a special offer for librarians if you would like to have access to review copies through our app. So look for the Volumes app where you find apps on your phone, and then you can email me directly if you have questions about how to get that special librarian access. So to kick it off, why not start with our producers themselves, who are in the process from the ground floor. And I truly miss one of my my least favorite parts of right now and being home is not getting to run into them in the hallway and say, what are you recording today? What are you working on? But I did connect with our fabulous director of the producers, Karen Jakonski, and she selected these two as her current producer picks. She said that she produced 2 debut novels recently that were absolutely gripping from their first pages and made her so happy to be an audiobook producer. They're both stories of survival against impossible odds with incredibly developed characters that were an honor to bring into the audio realm. So if you're not familiar with these titles, or even if you are, I just wanted to remind you about the audio editions. They're truly fantastic. Booklist would agree. They already gave How Much of These Hills is Gold a starred review. They said that Ho narrates Lucy's story as it jumps forwards and backwards in time with great range. I love this description they gave. As Lucy studies the world, Ho emphasizes Zhang's sensuous language by pausing, stretching out syllables, hushing her tone, and shrinking the size of words. So if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what will. But it's a fabulous story set against the twilight of the American Gold Rush. And it's really an adventure story about 2 siblings who are on their own in this unforgivable landscape. And speaking of booksontaped.com that I mentioned, if you listen to the clip of My Mother's House, you'll hear Dion Graham, and it's just chilling. It's so beautiful. And this has a starred book review from LJ, and they talk about the poetic imagery and the rich detail. And actually, the house itself in this book is like a character, and you hear the house's feelings, and it's just a riveting listen with 3 phenomenal narrators, as you can see there. So these are available now, and we hope you'll take a listen. So next up, Sex and Vanity from Kevin Kwan, and it's read by Lydia Look. This is a wonderful escapist summer listen, which I think we all need right now. This is actually the first in what will be known as the Cities trilogy. So in this one, you can visit New York, and then coming up next, he'll be writing about London and then Paris. So please, I want to go to all those places. So I'm in New York, but and we're thrilled that Lydia Look is back. She also read China Rich Girlfriend and Rich People Problems. And as you can see on the screen, she's been acclaimed for all of those. Audiophile has said that she's an expert narrator. And this is a glittering tale of a young woman who finds herself torn between 2 men, the waspy fiancé of her family's dreams, and George Zhao, the man she's desperately trying to avoid falling in love with. So this is a wonderful, as I said, summer listen, and it's actually a great comedy of manners set between 2 cultures, and it's an homage to A Room with a View. So next up, on the next slide, I love Jasmine Guillory. I had the pleasure of meeting her at PLA. I don't know if any of you listening in did as well, but she actually spoke at the audiobook supper and talked about her love for all formats, including, of course, audiobooks. And she has a wonderful, long-standing relationship with her narrator, who has read all of her audiobooks, Janina Edwards, who's been so acclaimed for all of her performances. And if you actually had a chance to check out the New York Times just this week, yesterday, a really great article came out called As Audiobook Market Grows, Narrators of Color Find Their Voice. And you can see a photograph hear from her directly in that article. But as I said, she's read all of Jasmine's audiobooks. She's won 2 Audiophile Earphones Awards for The Wedding Date and Royal Holiday, and just gives fabulous performances. And in this one, we get to listen to her character's chance meeting with a handsome stranger that turns into a whirlwind affair that gets everyone talking, because this character, Olivia, moves to LA to start her own law firm. And then she meets a gorgeous man at a hotel bar, and they spend the entire night flirting. And then she discovers that he's actually a hotshot junior senator. So then their relationship becomes a lot more public. So it's not what Olivia expected, and she has to find out if their relationship's strong enough to survive the heat of the spotlight. So another wonderful summer listen and book club discussion pick. So A Burning is an electrifying debut novel with a fabulous, authentic cast. This is another one that the producer, Aaron Blank, was just raving about every day that he was working on this in the office. And it's about 3 characters who seek to rise, one to the middle class, one to political power, one to fame in the movies. And they find their lives entangled in the wake of a catastrophe in contemporary India. This author was also at PLA, and she recently, you might have seen her on the Today Show, because this is the new June Read with Jenna pick. And I wanted to quote what she said about her own book, because it's eerily timely, I think, right now. But Megha said that she started writing from a place of alarm and anger. India has been changing in frightening ways and growing more intolerant of minority communities, more extremist. And she hopes that readers will see resonances in the US as well. This is a fast-paced novel and audiobook. It sounds like a thriller, and it covers themes of fate, success, class, corruption, and justice. And just to finally add from the author, she says that she hopes people will use the book to think about how they themselves have pursued dreams and tried to improve their own lives in hard conditions, however those hard conditions have presented in their own lives. So it's on sale now, and I highly recommend the audiobook with that phenomenal cast that you can see on the screen. So next up, The Vanishing Half, another one that's been chosen for a big book club this month. Good Morning America has selected this as their book club pick. This is, of course, from the New York Times best-selling author of The Mothers. And this is about twin sisters who were inseparable as children, who ultimately choose to live in two very different worlds, one black and one white. So again, really relates to conversations, important conversations that we're having right now. And the author on the Good Morning America said that the question at the center of the book is really what makes me, me, and what makes you, you. And she wants us to think about those questions and hopes that The Vanishing Half leads us to think about them in a different way. But there's also love stories in the book, and Booklist gave it a starred review, and they say, with an irresistible narrative voice, Bennett writes an intergenerational epic of race and reinvention, love and inheritance, divisions made and crossed, binding trauma, and the ever-present past. And it's read by Shayna Small, who you can see on the screen. She's a Juilliard-trained actress who was also a reader on the phenomenal Red at the Bone by Jackie Woodson. And she was actually just cast to read Ibram X. Kendi's Anti-Racist Baby, which is out next week on June 16th. So we're really thrilled to have her voice on this audiobook. Next up is Emily Giffen's The Lies That Bind. So this, again, I think is a great example of what multi-readers can do on an audiobook and the experience it can give you. So this is, of course, from the best-selling author of All We Ever Wanted and Something Borrows. And in this story, a young woman falls hard for an impossibly perfect man before he disappears without a trace. And what's really interesting, I think, about this audiobook is Brittany Presley reads the main character, and then there's a bit of a love triangle, not to give anything away, but you get to hear the emails from the different male characters through different voices. So Will Dameron and Vikas Adam. So I think, again, that's a wonderful way to really bring what's already a thrilling, great summer read to life on audio. And you know, Booklist said that it's great, also great for YA crossover appeal. So keep that in mind when you're recommending. So next up, we're so thrilled to have Hank Green back this summer with A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. And again, I think this is a great example of an author who just formed a great connection with his narrator. Kristen C. actually attended one of the book launch events when an absolutely remarkable thing came out. And Hank Green himself was a bit of surprise. He lent his voice to the first production. And you'll have to see if he does again here. But we have a wonderful full cast. Just a few of them are listed on your screen, but there are actually even more that have been added to this production. But in the first book, a young graphic artist inspired worldwide hysteria when she accidentally made first contact with an alien. And now, in a beautifully foolish endeavor, it's the bold and brilliant follow-up. And it's a fast-paced adventure where her friends try to find out what happened to her. And Booklist pointed out the first time that audio is actually an ideal format for Green's media savvy fans, because he's actually, of course, one half of the wildly popular Vlogbrothers. And the first audiobook was a listen list and a Yalsa Amazing Audiobook for Young Adults pick. And Kristen C is back again. And we're so thrilled, as I said, to have a bunch of other phenomenal voices joining her. For example, Nicole Lewis, who's getting such wide acclaim for such a fun age, is on the recording. And you can head over to booksontaped.com to see the full listing of everyone who will be lending their voice to this beautifully foolish endeavor. So this I'm really excited about, Memoirs and Misinformation. So I grew up, as many of you might have done, on Jim Carrey movies, and this is his attempt to destroy the celebrity memoir, because this is a novel. But as you can see on the slide, it says, none of this is real and all of it is true. So meet Jim Carrey. Sure, he's an insanely successful and beloved movie star, drowning in wealth and privilege, but he's also lonely, maybe past his prime, maybe even getting fat. He's tried diets, gurus, cuddling with his military-grade Israeli guard dogs, but nothing seems to lift the cloud of emptiness and ennui. Even the sage advice of his best friend, actor, and dinosaur skull collector, Nicolas Cage. So you just get an idea of the journey you're about to go on. This is for fans of sharp Hollywood satire, explosively inventive fiction, and of course fans of Jim Carrey, and in true fashion with destroying the celebrity memoir, because this of course is not a memoir, it's a novel. This is actually narrated by his good friend, Dumb and Dumber co-star Jeff Daniels, who you can see peeking out from his home studio in isolation there. So I'm very excited to hear this, and it's just, people are saying it's just fearless, and it's of course semi-autobiographical, but a real deconstruction of his persona. So lots to discuss there. And next up, a new audio original. So last year, you may recall, we had our first audio original come out called Dooku Jedi Lost. There's a really cool behind the scenes video if you've never visited the Penguin Random House Audio YouTube page. I highly recommend it. You can see all the talented narrators behind the scenes. And so we have a new one coming this summer. Also will be performed by a full cast. It's an expanded adaptation of the critically acclaimed Marvel Comics series, where Dr. Aphra teams up with Darth Vader himself. And I just have to say, as someone who I can admit, hopefully, no one can yell at me because I'm by myself. I've never been a huge Star Wars person, quote unquote. However, when I first started listening to the audiobooks, I was like, oh my gosh, these are incredible. I mean, they really, I remember the producer was like, yeah, like they are. We have the real sound effects. The narrators can do every voice, all the recognizable iconic roles. It's just unbelievably immersive and like listening to a movie in your head, which sounds so cliche, but is really true. I so highly recommend these for, of course, Star Wars fans, but really for anybody who wants a really exciting sci-fi fantasy listen. And then we're really excited. Next slide, we are welcoming Elena Ferrante to our list for the first time on audio from Books on Tape. So this is her next book, The Lying Life of Adults. It's a powerful new novel set in a divided Naples. And we have not announced the narrator yet. So also check out booksontaped.com or sign up for newsletters to see when we have that announcement coming. But again, I think excellent for book clubs and for some armchair travel to Italy, which of course is another bittersweet comment. But I think that that there'll be lots more news about this very soon. Actually, Netflix announced that they're going to develop a series based on The Lying Life of Adults. And so we couldn't be more thrilled to welcome her to our list. So look for this in September. And then a new one from Jodi Picoult always means I think that the audio will also be very special. As you can see, some of her previous titles on there, Small Great Things, it was an Audio Award winner, read by the phenomenal Audra McDonald alongside two other phenomenal narrators. We haven't announced narrators for this one yet, but this is a really fascinating story where everything changes in a single moment for the character Dawn Edelstein. She's on a plane when the flight attendant makes an announcement, prepare for a crash landing. She braces herself as thoughts flash through her mind, but the shocking thing is the thoughts are not of her husband, but a man she last saw 15 years ago. So if that doesn't pique your interest, this is actually based on the fascinating history of real Egyptian artifacts, because there's a real history of the Book of Two Ways, which is an ancient burial text found only in coffins in Middle Egypt. So you can always rely on Jodi Picoult to teach you so much about something that perhaps you didn't know a lot about. Her research is incredible. And this also raises that thought-provoking book club question, lots to discuss there, of thinking of the one who got away, and what if you could have a second chance to take a path that you didn't choose. So that comes out in September. And then we're thrilled that we're welcoming Ken Follett and, of course, John Lee back to the list with The Evening and the Morning. This is from the best-selling author of The Pillars of the Earth, which is also read by John Lee. And I'm out of time, but what more do I need to say about this, really? So look for that this fall. And then finally, I wanted to leave you with some kids picks. So just quickly flashing across the screen, these are notable author reads for kids. We're really excited about all of these, and you can listen to clips on our website, and then also some other listening library summer picks on the next slide that I hope you will look out for, some coming out very soon, some coming out more in the fall, but all wonderful recommendations. So join us every Wednesday if you want to hear more from me. Wednesdays at 11 for PRH Morning Buzz. And that's it for me. So thank you so much, and be well.
Thanks so much, Jen. Our final panelist today will be William Anderson. Celebrating 15 years with Naxos AudioBooks, William oversees the sales and marketing of audiobook, book, and multimedia content produced by Naxos and its distributed partners. He enjoys working with associates from around the globe as the business owner for the streaming service, the Naxos Spoken Word Library, NSWL, and has served on the Audio Publisher Association board and committees. The floor is yours, William.
Thank you. Naxos AudioBooks, born out of classical music, became a part of the Naxos Music Group and celebrated its 25th anniversary last year. From the beginning, our focus was on the classics, starting off with fiction of the 18th and 19th century British writers. And then Naxos AudioBooks expanded into nonfiction, foreign literature and English translation. And what we were releasing in 2020 still very much focuses on the classics, with a few interesting variations along the way. So our schedule for 2020 and the second half of the year very much reflects our original business model. Here are a few highlights. Christine de Pizan, Italian-born in Venice, established her relationship with French King Charles VI, making it possible for her to live as a poetess and a writer. The Book of the City of Ladies appeared around 1405. It's an allegory, much like much of the literature of that time. A fictional society is built by the author with the help of three personified virtues: reason, rectitude, and justice. The book questions the misogyny of the time, particularly in regards to the educational quality and the opportunities for women. Narrator Georgia Jean Sutton, who is one of our regular readers, is featured in our productions of Moll Flanders and Vanity Fair. Cousin Bette, we moved to Balzac and the Paris of the 19th century post-Neapolitan. Cousin Bette is the third book in Naxos audiobook has recorded from Balzac's La Comédie Humaine. It's read by Lucy Scott, who's another favorite reader for Naxos audiobooks. She's read the enormous Fanny Burney novel Camilla, coming in at 37 plus hours, and Clarissa. This is one of perhaps particular relevance in this year with our presidential elections coming up in November. Alexis de Tocqueville was a French aristocrat and lawyer. He was sent to America to examine the American prison system initially and toured America between 1831 and 1832. And while he was there, he became very interested in the whole democratic system of America. So what followed was Democracy in America in two parts. The first published in 1835 and the second in 1840. It compares the American Democrat system to those in Europe and particularly those in France. It's a very detailed survey of American government, and many of the observations are very foresighted and relevant to today. It's read by Peter Wickham, another Naxos favorite, who has read Darwin's On the Origin of the Species and Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. City of God, St. Augustine, written after the capture of Rome by the Visigoths in 410. It's intended as a response to the pagan critics who blame Christianity for that defeat and the sack of Rome. The main theme, while the city of man is perishable and impermanent, the city of God endures. Mark Meadows, who also read The Confession of St. Augustine, reads this for Naxos Audiobooks. Piers Plowman, one of the great works of the Middle Ages, dates the late 14th century, again allegoric, the story of a man's quest for the true Christian life. The story is presented in a series of dreams where the main characters meet an array of allegoric characters. Jonathan Keeble is a very experienced narrator, has recorded over 30 books for Naxos Audiobooks, including Byron's Don Juan and Oliver Twist. 10 Days That Shook the World, a first-hand account of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. John Reed was an American journalist, a columnist really, therefore pretty sympathetic to the Bolshevik Revolution and what they were trying to do. And that gave him access to many of the Bolshevik officials. He got to hear speeches by Lenin and Trotsky, and we have a vivid close-up account of his experience. It has been called the most consequential news story of the century. Though Stalin was less of a fan, the book was actually banned during his readership. Here it is read by Adam Sims. Romola is the fourth novel by George Eliot, written in 1862, 1863. And it is the only one not set in the 19th century England. It took her quite a long time to produce this, about 18 months, taking several visits to Florence, where the novel is set in the 15th century. There are parallels between that society with its upheavals and those of Victorian England. It's read by Lucy Scott. The autobiography of a hunted priest is a little bit less known. Father John Gerard was a Jesuit priest, and he was on the wrong end of the persecution of the Catholics, which took place in the 16th century England under Elizabeth I. He managed to hide successfully for 8 years, but he was caught and imprisoned, including in the Tower of London, and extensively tortured. But he did manage to escape and ended up in continental Europe, where he was instructed by his Jesuit fathers to write his account, which he did, and we have it here. Although not in Latin, it's an English translation. Le Morte d'Arthur is a major Middle English work by Sir Thomas Malory. You get all the major stories here, quite well known: Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot. It's an action-packed 39 hours of narration and is read by Bill Homewood, who has read well over 50 titles for Naxos AudioBooks, including The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Les Miserables, and Tom Jones. Eminent Victorians is Leighton Scratchy. Scratchy was one of the older members of the Bloomsbury Group. Eminent Victorians appeared in 1918 and marked a new direction in the genre of biography, which is why it's so important. He isn't, well, with the exception of Florence Nightingale, he isn't at all flattering of his subjects, but it's established that Starkey as the leading biographer. Bertrand Russell, who was in prison at the time for anti-war protest, read it, loved it, and laughing out loud in his cell, the prison warden had to come down to his cell to remind him that prison was supposed to be a place of punishment. This is read by Jonathan Keeble. I thank you for your time today, and more information can be found at naxosaudiobooks.com/marketing-materials. And for free audiobooks, visit us at the Naxos Spoken Word Library, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much, William, and apologize for my very Midwestern pronunciation of Naxos. A huge thank you to William and to all of today's wonderful panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. On Monday, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, certificate of completion, and a video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post daily about all things books and library land. Did you know Booklist content is freely available to all until further notice? Start reading with our digital edition, a format that pairs the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com. Interested in subscribing? Take advantage of this special webinar offer to get print, online, digital, and archive access to Booklist for only $99. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more thank you to our sponsors, LA Theater Works, ECW Press, Books on Tape, and Naxos AudioBooks. This concludes today's webinar.